Hi, and welcome to Courageous Leadership in Times of Global Crisis and Uncertainty, an HMG Strategy virtual briefing. I'm Tom Hoffman at HMG Strategy, and I'll be moderating today's event. Our speakers for today's event are Hunter Muller, Lead Principal at HMG Strategy, and Tony Leng, Managing Director, Digital Transformation and CIO Practice Lead at Diversified Search. Hunter and Tony, thanks so much for joining us today.
Great to be here.
Excellent, Tom. Thank you so much.
So in today's virtual briefing, we'll be examining how the unprecedented scale of and scope of the global COVID-19 pandemic is impacting multiple sectors of the economy, along with its bearing on corporate cash flows, supply chain operations, highly distributed workforce arrangements, and changing customer behaviors. We'll also be discussing how navigating the turbulence ahead will demand courageous leadership from CIOs and technology executives, along with recommendations for cultivating a culture of inclusiveness and innovation at a time when the organization needs fresh ideas and collaboration to move the company forward. This will be followed by a Q&A with Hunter and Tony. So at this point, I'd like to ask Hunter for his overarching views on the current landscape and the dynamic mindset that's required by CIOs and technology executives today. Hunter?
Excellent, Tom. Thank you so much. And it's a pleasure to be here with you all. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedules of this incredible, insane week we've just been through. An unprecedented time in the history of our country, in the history of business, in the history of our markets. And as we reflected about how we add value to our network, to you, to our community, you, and to all of our tech leaders that follow us through our digital platform, some 400,000 readers throughout the week receive our research and thought leadership several times a week, over 1 million impressions a week worldwide. It occurred to me, how am I leading? How am I personally making this personal? How am I thinking and leading through an unprecedented time, an unprecedented crisis in the global economic landscape? And this idea of a sudden stop, a sudden economic stop. And as reflecting back just 30 days ago, this wasn't really focused on the radar screen in the US. You began to track in China in January and February about their situation, but the information was incomplete. And we began to dive deep into researching this pandemic and how it was impacting different countries, different continents, different societies. And then, of course, a crisis only comes to bear or comes to a point when it's personal, when it affects you, your family, right, your friends, your company, your lifestyle, your life movement, and so forth. And one of my passions has always been is to give you unfiltered access, unfiltered thought leadership and research around leading, innovating and transforming, and your career, ensuring your brand and your career was successfully positioned in the context of our industry, the World Wide Web, the HMG platform, again, 1 million impressions a week. And then most recently, leading courageously into the C-suite, leading courageously into the boardroom, leading courageously. What does it take to think differently today in unprecedented in a crisis moment? And I came around to my team 2 weeks ago Monday. I said, you know what? I think we're going into a very, very bad, difficult period. And I said it's going to get really ugly, and people are going to get nervous. People are going to be scared. People are going to really want strong leadership. They're going to want unique leadership. Are you up for the challenge in general? To my team, to myself. And I thought about it. And then I thought about scanning the news horizons of what's real, what's not, what's fake, what's real news, what matters, what really contextually matters in the context of my professional, personal life, and how I lead, most importantly, the network, the HMG platform network of tech execs, tech leaders around the world. And it hit me, and I said, you know, Hunter, I've been through several crises in business before. We started the company in 08, 09, 2010. I remember flying around the country. There was no one in the planes, there was no one in the airports, and no one in the hotels. And it was eerie, incredibly scary and eerie. And I drew back, and I can suggest this, draw back to in your lifetime, whether it be professional or personal, how you manage through crisis. Because that's going to give you some secrets into your own professional psyche, your IQ, your EQ, your whole DNA that's shaped and how you respond to and effectively lead and interact through crisis. And it occurred to me, and it hit me as I did my own assessment of my company, of our markets, of our platform, of all you all, why you like to come to our summits, to our events, and how do we inform you, keep you abreast of what really matters contextually, what's important in the here and now regarding leading, innovating, transforming the latest technologies from Israel, Tel Aviv, to Silicon Valley, to Boston, to Atlanta, to Pittsburgh. It hit me and I said, you know what, Hunter, we have to go digital as a company, obviously, right? We're here. We have to begin the dialogue in a very open, honest manner with humility and sincerity and with a big heart, coming from a place of thought leadership, facts, but also a high EQ, and a big heart. We always have been in that heart place. And I think when you think about us and me, is that this is all about you and how can we help make you, your team, your go-to-market, your C-suite, your board, your enterprise safe and secure, and your team, your IT team. How can we uplift you, encourage you, inspire you to be the best you can be, to win courageously in the most unprecedented time history in business that we've ever been in? And I think it's really kind of a great way to kick off today, our first webinar in a series of Monday, Friday webinars, including summits that will be virtual over the next 8 weeks, leading up to hopefully the physical summits kicking in early summer. But I'd like to introduce you to Tony Leng, who's been a dear friend of mine and of the HMG network, based on the West Coast, but a global perspective, a global executive, a top search executive, but a former CEO of a large company, and an entrepreneur and an investor. And perhaps, in my opinion, in our search world, one of the best search execs helping tech leaders land rockstar CIO positions, rockstar tech leader positions, as well as board seats, which we all have to admit, that's part of the discussion, is how do you up-level your whole ascent and eventually land on a board if that's something you're of interest and desire, and that's clearly a thread through all of our summits. So I'm gonna stop there. I went a little bit over in terms of my intro, but I've been thinking about this, obviously, for the past 3 months. How do we go out and how do we create a platform to help accelerate your whole IQ, EQ, your whole engagement, and get you dialed in and focused so that you can lead confidently and passionately, and we can feed you through a series of digital webinars, eventually the physical events, our white papers, our research, or hopefully you get all our thought leadership and research, as well as eventually the physical events that hopefully spin up in July. So Tony Leng, Tony, welcome to today's program, our first of a series of, I think now forever we'll be dialed in here at a Studio 1A in Westport, Connecticut. One thing that I know you and I resonate on, Tony, is this notion of leading. And what does it take to lead at any point in time? But now, most importantly, what does it take to lead in these highly unprecedented times? And where do you filter and how do you get the right information at just at the right time to stay dialed into what really matters? Because let's all admit, you can get caught in a funk or caught in a quagmire or caught in a jam. How do you stay focused and leading in these crazy, unprecedented times? Tony, welcome.
Well, Hunter, thank you for those very kind words. I really appreciate it. And just before I try and answer your question, I want to thank you and your team, because, you know, there are many organizations that focus on CIOs and other executives, and a lot of them are takers. And I think HMG is unique in that it is a giving organization. It's trying to help people be better. And this series that you put together here is kind of a step in absolutely the right direction. How do you help people be better? And I praise you for that, and I thank you for that. So, how do you lead? Well, as you've probably heard me say on many occasions, authentic leadership is really what it's all about. It's never where you're leading to, it's where you're leading from. And at this time, that becomes incredibly important, because the two is now highly unique. We are enabling people to work from home. We're enabling people to work in a very different environment. Here we all are meeting on a virtual basis. We used to meet live. So the two is very different. organization's cultures will be defined in the next month. So, if you're currently leading, have a look at what your organization says about its values, principles. Who does it value? Does it value employees, customers? And if those things are espoused as important, I think that as leaders of organizations right now, we need to really dig into that and make sure that we are leading in that manner, making sure that if our employees are important, that we understand what is the environment they're facing. Everyone is scared. Everyone is uncertain. Everyone is now working from home, and we need to be very sensitive to that kind of environment.
Hey, Tony, stop right there, Tony.
Right.
And by the way, your mic is coming in and out a little bit. Is my sound okay, Tom? Am I good? My delivery? Okay, now I know I'm passionate. I speak very fast, but let's dial down and drill in there. And it's really a fascinating concept. I think Thoreau came up with it first, is that people are a pile of their own fears. And when you really dial into that notion of leadership and you become that open servant leader, that open caring leader, that open empathetic leader, and you walk into your organization and you know it, you can see it in people's eyes. There's fear. Break that down really slowly and succinctly. How do you lead at that point? And you're right, you said it perfectly. Context matters, right? So you got to block out all of the other noise in terms of the media and what your friends are talking about and so forth. Create a purpose, engagement, and mission for us to think about it and break it down to ABC CIO. It's a $1 billion company. It's a $10 billion. It's a $100 billion company. How do I lead authentically with courage and passion and inspire people to be effective?
Headset, I understood that the sound wasn't good. Hopefully this is an improvement. So I think if you're leading, you need to be very sensitive to the fact, as you said, people are nervous, people are scared. So how do you get close to them and understand their environments? People are having daily stand-up meetings. They're touching base with their people, as I say, on a daily basis. That becomes important. Understanding and being flexible around schedules, around time, understanding that there are going to be heroes and villains at this time. The hero leader is somebody who is sacrificing and putting others first. The villain is someone who goes to the store and buys up all the toilet rolls and buys up, all the hand sanitizer and leaves nothing for others. Those people put themselves first. An authentic leader is someone who's thinking about their team, thinking about their organization first. The other important point is honesty. If your organization has a lot of cash on hand, tell people not to worry. We've got cash on hand, because people are feared around losing their jobs. But if that is not the case, let them know. Tell them, we're probably going to go into a time of furlough. The government now allows you to collect unemployment immediately. So you're going to work 1 week on and 1 week off. And that week off, 60% of your pay will be handled by government. We can't afford it. But people want that honesty and they want that authenticity.
Well, let's stop right there. And that's a really important fact. I've been watching on the international news is the way Congress is really working hard to pass this $1 trillion, that's $1 trillion bailout package, probably the biggest non-wartime expenditure ever in the history of our country, a monumental. My guess is, I talked to my team about this morning, they'll be working through the weekend to chisel it, figure out how it rolls and how it goes out. But this when this hit me this week, when I said, oh my gosh, so I'm an entrepreneur, I know what my cash flow is, I know my burn rate. How long can I weather this storm at HMG, and then communicate it openly to my team about where we are and we're fortunately, God bless, we're in good shape. But then I watched, we were in Orlando, finishing up the Orlando summit late last week, Thursday, at Disneyland, having dinner, 8:45, 8:50, and walked out of the park, and one of the workers says, yeah, it's over. I go, what? We get in the Uber back to the hotel, and on CNN at 9:15, Disney's closed for a period of time. And then you begin to get to dial into that idea of cash burn and cash, what the war chest looks like. You're so right on. And you look at the head of the CEO of American Airlines was on CNBC yesterday saying he's never seen anything like this before. Boeing looks like they're out of cash after burning through a $6 to $10 billion mezzanine that they had just 30 days ago. And they're going to need to be rescued by the government, both Boeing and the airline industry.
Right, and that's a real challenge. And if you look at the way many of the organizations are structured, there's a lot of private equity activity and a lot of debt. And you probably know that a zombie company is a company where it cannot, through its own cash flow, meet its interest payments. And because of the high debt levels, if revenues go down, there are going to be an increasing number of zombie companies. And that is incredibly scary for people. You know, what's going to happen to me? How will I feed my family? How will I pay my mortgage? And it really is going to require just an enormous amount of courage and leadership and belief in the future. Because like everything, I think we will get through this. And will we emerge with our leadership credentials and our credibility in place or not? I've often spoken about the big me and the little me. And the little me is the person who immediately retreats into their shell and only thinks about themselves and acts in a very selfish manner. The bigger me says, who is dependent upon me and how can I show up for those people? So my advice to many executives is think about everybody who is dependent upon you. If you don't currently know their situation, find out. Do a Zoom, phone people up, talk to them, be openly authentic about some of your own fears, but then think about how can I show up for these people in ways that are meaningful for them at this time. And I think if we have that mindset, how can I serve others? How can I show up for others in ways that are meaningful for them? I think that our leadership credibility plus our corporate culture will be enhanced during these next months.
Fascinating time. And I do think, guys, we were on a team meeting here just about an hour ago, and I'm not a stock picker, right? I'm an investor, right? In my company and in business and the economy. And I do think you have a bottom here. I think by actions with the U.S. government and what they're going to pass over the weekend, it's not a U bottom. It's not a V bottom here in terms of the equity markets. I think it's an L bottom and a nice long build out, but I think the bottom's in. I'm going to Monday, Tuesday this week. Great time to invest for 401k or the next 10 to 20 years. Amazing time. Bill Miller saying, but it's interesting the different kind of messaging you're getting in the business news on how people are handling this whole. Was on famous investor on Squawk Box yesterday, and he was really nervous. Ray Dalio from Bridgewater, largest hedge fund in the world, a little nervous, talking in circles, trying to architect what a structural foundation would be in terms of how we work our way out of it. But I do think once this announcement comes out next week from Congress and the U.S. government that the bottom's in, and the key is back to the big me and little me is it's not that easy, like to dial into the big me and little me. It's not all that much fun. It takes work, right? It takes a lot of hard work, but I think it's a living learning experiment that we're in right now. It's an amazing growth period. Talk about that, Tony. When do people grow the most in their professional and personal lives? And it's an amazing growth opportunity. If you really believe that, you can use this as a compelling growth opportunity for your professional and personal life and step out of that comfort zone. A friend of mine at Boeing, Ted Colbert, used to say, you know what? I always like to be able to my tips of my skis. And if I'm not comfortable leaning forward, I know I'm not engaged and leaning in passionately. Tony?
Well, you're exactly right. And I've spoken a lot at your conferences about, how do we grow? And we grow through good times, but we grow dramatically through times of high stress. And what's important about that is learning about yourself during this time. And, we just mentioned the big me and little me, and understanding the little me aspects of what am I really scared about? What am I worried about? What am I concerned about giving up? And balancing that out against the big me, which is, what can I do for my community? What can I do for my organization, for my family, for others? And that always involves some form of sacrifice. It always involves, us going the extra mile and doing things differently. But what the important part of that is understanding how you are growing and taking a perspective on how you've handled it personally. So, we are going through this time of fear. So when you are calling up and speaking to your staff members, when you're doing this, are you think clearly? Are you being very authentic in what you say and what you do? People always know. People can always sense, and they can always tell if it's coming from the heart or it's coming from the head. And so kind of look into yourself and understand where you are on that journey of growth, because I think that's really important. And I think a lot of people will be stressed. A lot of people will be tested. But it's I won't say it's a wonderful social experiment, because it's just a hard time, and I don't want to be insensitive at all. But it is interesting to see how certain people are reacting. And you just need to go into your stores. You need to listen to certain leaders. You need to see people who are sending out emails and are price gouging and are kind of trying to take advantage of this COVID-19. For me, that's kind of almost, in my mind, that's the sort of kiss of death. Are you trying to take advantage of other people's difficulty and other people's trouble? Those are the villain leaders. And, you need to try and put yourself in the hero category.
What do you mean? Are you telling us, Tony, you didn't stock up on your paper products?
I didn't.
Good.
No, and it was,
glad to hear that.
It was extraordinary to see, yes, we're going through, this huge crisis, but, are we just going to go to the bathroom 10 times as much because of that? Probably not.
Let's take a pass on that. Let's pivot the discussion and up-level it. Let's talk about success in a new defined world, because I do believe, I was opening up the summit last Thursday in Orlando. I said, you know what, I think, and I saw the Dow futures were down 1,000, and I ended up being, I think that day, the Dow was down 2,000 in one day. Now percentage drop, maybe not the largest ever, but the largest point drop. Here's the idea. Let's talk about leadership in the new reality. My friend Art Hopkins from Russell Reynolds said, you know what? After today, everything changes. So maybe after today, everything changes. What can we do more effectively, professionally, in the professional context, in the most highly innovative, highly transformational, highly disruptive world we've ever will have lived in? Because guess what? Look down Main Street, which is just empty. Most of these businesses run on 30 to 90-day cash. So you're going to see a lot of bankruptcies in the next 6 months that are people that are not going to make the pivot, Boeing included, unless they're rescued by the United States government as a national treasure, a national contractor, national defense contractor for us. Let's talk about, what does success look like? Helping people, borrowing Steve Jobs, to think creatively and differently. What can we do differently? Everyone, if you left from this webinar today with 1, 2, or 3 tips, do you want to journal more in a professional sense? Try different things, meet new people, have new experiences, network in a different realm? Because the power of the platform, the power of the network at HMG is we change people's lives by connecting and building relationships. What's your recipe? When one of your top search recruits is talking, you're working with them, what do you say they can do best, most effectively to increase their career ascent right now?
So I think we all need to realize that trust is going to be built in a slightly different way. We always used to build trust solely on face-to-face meetings. And I think we need to say, here's a new environment, here's a new digital. We need to be able to build trust, looking at pixels and not necessarily touching with flesh in the next few months. And it involves sharing more more openly, being more transparent, being more authentic, because you can't look somebody in the eye in the way that we used to do that. So how do you build that trust? Because all of what we do, how do we inspire people to follow us? How do we get people to do difficult and challenging things? People do that because they follow you, because they trust you, and they believe in you. If you cannot travel as much, if you cannot be in their presence quite as much, you need to do a different and more effective job in that.
Well, and to your point there, Tony, it's the likability factor. Like when you're in a crisis on a personal sense, who do you reach out to? Your significant other, your spouse, or your best friend that you implicitly trust and you've known for 10, 20, 30 years.
Yes.
In business, now we need to do it in a distributed, we've been talking about working remotely for years.
Yes.
If you go back in terms of the research articles will tell you just a year ago at our June summit in Toronto, by our friends at Ring Central, the factoid was put out, only 7% of all meetings in the enterprise are done via video conference. I would say it's probably going to be 70% here shortly, if not now. And you can accomplish so much more with the technologies, whether it be Zoom, Ring Central, or whatever that's out there, and the collaboration tools. But it's coming from a place of authenticity. And what we talk about here at HMG is a big heart. Hug your customers, love your customers. Think about them first before yourself, right?
That's exactly correct. And I think frequency becomes something that's going to be more important and different, because the brain, if you've met somebody face to face and physically, you kind of remember that experience at a deeper level and for a longer period of time. But when you're meeting somebody on a screen, as we are doing now, it's not as deep. So it has to be more frequent. So I think that what everybody needs to do is realize that the word social distancing is really unfortunate. I think we all need to think of physical distancing, but we need to think of becoming closer from a social perspective. And how do you do that at the moment? Well, if you can't do it physically, you need to do it on a screen and on a phone and in any way you can, because people will feel cut off because of the lack of physical. So we need to draw them in other ways. And that's where technology and what we're doing this morning, I think, is game-changing.
Thank you, Tony. And one thing I'm going to do is reach out to my friend, the CEO of Zoom, Eric Wan, who's been a great supporter and spoken at our events, and we're friends on a professional level. I'm going to ask Zoom, we're going to put together a series of Zoom tip webinars, how to be more effective on webinars. Harry Mosley is a great friend, as well as Gary Sorrentino. And Gary's and Harry are both great at delivering content and thought leadership over the web. So again, when you think about that whole idea of now building a distributed network of champions for you globally, LinkedIn plays a part of it, right? I mean, folks, is everyone really dialed into their professional brand? I mean, we can't not cover professional brand, Tony. You have one, whether you like it or not, right? So you might as well be aware of it and say, okay, I'm going to throw a few cycles at it. What's your thoughts about professional brand?
Well, I think that's important. Everybody has, as you said, everybody's got a brand, whether they like their brand or not. You have a brand, and the brand now will increasingly go from, the physical you and I meet and you get a sense, to kind of this online stuff. And I think it's important that we have one, but I think what's important again, that it's authentically who you are. Heaven forbid that when we can get together and meet again, and you've created a persona online with kind of who you are and how you come across, and then I meet you in real life, face to face at a meeting, and that's not who you are, in fact. And so I think that thinking through your personal and professional brand, it's like, what am I trying to accomplish here? Is this really who I am and who I believe myself to be? Is this the big me person that I'm creating out there? Or is this some fantasy of who I wish I was, and I'd rather be an avatar pretending that I'm somebody completely different, because I don't think that's authentic, and I think ultimately that plays against you. So brand is important, but authentic brand is important, and understand why you're doing that and what's the purpose behind creating your brand. I think that's equally important.
Okay, let's talk about tipping the discussion towards what the C-suite's looking for from their next tech leader. One individual said, to me recently, they're looking for a business leader now more than ever. When you talk to CEOs and CFOs, COOs, and heads of HR, what are they looking for from their next hire? Tony, what kind of authentic, courageous, passionate leader are they looking for?
So I think if we're looking for a tech leader, this is an amazing time. We've got to understand that the purpose of every business is to find and keep customers. The CIO used to be in the background. The CIO is now in the foreground of that equation. And why? Because everyone's going from doing business in sort of an analog way to doing it digitally. Here we are. Meetings are analog. These things are digital. So everyone is moving in that direction. And the key point behind that is the technology is really important, but what we need to be doing and what executives need is someone to help articulate how to go from being an analog business to being a digital business. And that means changing digitally at the core. It doesn't mean just bolting on a few little digital things around the edges. It's digital transformation at the core. Now, there are senior executives in many companies who've been there a long, long time. They know their business, they know their industry, they know their markets. And this new digital tsunami coming at them is making them incredibly nervous and incredibly scared. Some, I think, feel a bit like imposters at this time. So I think the key skill set for a CIO is to have enough EQ to come alongside that executive and be the tech whisperer, to come close to them and say, here's what the road looks like. Here's what the journey looks like. I'm going to help you and I'm going to make you a success during this transformation. I'm your partner. Yes, you know the technology, but you got to know the people and the fears that they are going through. And senior executives who are scared, they can be difficult to deal with. And so you need to be able to have that skill to come alongside and help them go on that journey.
Interesting times. Tom, do you want to jump in with a question for Tony?
Sure. So, you've both talked a lot about the importance of authentic leadership and clear communication during a time of crisis like this. Tony, can you also talk about how you go about fostering collegiality among teammates and bringing that together so that there's strong collaboration going on during these times?
Yes, and I've got a small CIO group that meets in normally in the Bay Area on a monthly basis, and we had our first sort of video get together yesterday, and they were sharing, many of those CIOs sharing what they're doing, and it often involves daily meetings with their teams. They are reaching out and understanding what are people experiencing on a day-to-day basis. We're expecting them to work from home, and yet, many of them have got aging parents, they've got kids, they've got dogs, they've got things they need to do, within the home that's a little different. So it's touching base with people frequently, understanding some of the challenges that they face day to day working from their home, and then just making sure that the home setup works. One of the big problems everybody is experiencing is if everybody worked in San Francisco and they're now working from the suburbs, is the bandwidth suitable and capable to handle that? Somebody just said on the chat, my voice is breaking up every now and then, coming in and out a little bit. That's just because I'm working from home and the bandwidth at my house is probably not as good as it is downtown in my office. So, to foster collegiality first, it's to talk to people a lot, understand their situation, get team members to share. So when you have your daily stand-up, start with each team member telling a little bit about what's happening in their lives, what are they experiencing, what's going on with them personally. So those are some of the tips that I heard from very smart people yesterday.
Well, thanks, Tony. And one thing to reiterate, and maybe we sound like you and I a little bit like a broken record on this one, is I think it's the best time ever to be in technology, to be a tech exec. And I try to come at every day being happy and grateful and sincere and open, authentic, but a feeling of sometimes feeling blessed to have chosen this career 35 years ago to go into this profession. And what a fun, wild ride it has been and will continue to be. You know, watching 30 years of CNBC, and maybe I should change the network I watch, but in the morning and at night, but there was a kind of a flippant comment by an analyst saying, okay, at the end of this, we know we have 3 retailers left: Amazon, Walmart, go. Well, I remember being with Kim Stevenson in London in 2010. She flew in from Ireland to address our London summit, and she goes, disrupt or be disrupted, disrupt and die or die. And it comes around this whole, this idea of thinking uniquely different, you know, the Steve Jobs quote, you know, and reinventing yourself, right? Reinventing your thought process and getting out there, leading passionately, leading courageously, and staying out there, because the little me, the big me, the little me, and the little me is constantly pulling you back to a distorted reality that doesn't serve you, right?
Yes. So those are wonderful, you know, and great points. And yes, this is an amazing time to think about your business model, your go-to-market, how you deliver and what you do, and it's all going to be more technologically enabled. So yes, this is an amazing time for CIOs to really step up and become key contributors towards understanding the current business model and how does that evolve, the current sort of supply chains and how should they be different, how do we deliver, how do we find and keep customers. Again, going back to that theme, you know, the CIO and the technologists are the people that are going to drive, you know, the different model. And I think what this has done is just sped that forward a bit. You know, I think we've all known that everything is moving digital, everything is going in that direction. But what's happened now with COVID-19, I think it's sped it up a little bit, and it just makes the CIO that much more important. And so CIOs, my kind of call to action is put on the big me, be bold, be courageous, kind of embrace your role in the strategy of your organization and how technology can position your business better and to be more effective going forward.
I double down on that. I agree 100%. And I also say, I think it's an opportunity to help the business either facilitate, enable, or lead. A core competency that every company is going to need is reimagining, reinventing, inventing new business models, new go-to-market, new way to interface and engage your customer base. I mean, how many people have been flying now for 10, 20, 30, 40 years? The airlines just 40 years into that are starting to get to the point where there's an acceptable level of customer engagement and a web interface as you look to navigate changing your flights, for example, right?
Right.
That can't take 40 years. It's got to happen in the next 12 months if a company wants to stay in business in this highly compressed environment, because everything will change going forward.
Yes, and that's exactly right. And what I found quite interesting just in our small business is we sent everybody home a couple of weeks ago. Everybody works from their home, and we are now talking to our customers about, you know, yes, we understand this is a difficult time and you have other priorities, but you know, the search for talent and bringing top talent in is really important. And if you are a strong and a stable business, you know, you can consider moving forward. But how do you do that? And the way you do that now is everything gets done on a remote basis, and we are now coaching our clients as to how do you interview, how do you deal with, how do you understand a candidate in a more meaningful way without them necessarily having to come and meet you live and personally. That's how we've always done it. And I've got people who I have placed and who I've built up very strong relationships with over the years, who I've never met physically, but I've built up a really strong relationship with them because this is how we talk and this is how we interact. And I think we all need to think a little differently about how those relationships get built and how we interface with our clients, our customers, our staff, everybody. And, going back to that theme of, it's all about leading from the heart and being credible and being authentic. And how do we do that on a small screen rather than physically and, in front of people? And our business model needs to be impacted by that.
Tony, I think you said so much there in that last 30 seconds. I want to kind of unpack it a little bit more. Leading from the heart and leading authentically off a digital screen. I mean, that could be a 30-minute, 1-hour webinar alone. And we might think, guys, in the future to have other people on the screen so we can get more interaction with our folks. We have over 60 people here attending. Can we take a question, Nikki or Tom, do you know, via chat?
We can. So, and thank you both for the terrific insights you've shared so far. If attendees are interested in sharing a question, click on the Q&A tab at the bottom of your console, enter the question, and then hit submit. And if we don't get to your question today, we'll be sure to respond to it by email. Hunter, this first question is for you. It tees up what you and Tony had talked about a little bit before, which is, can you offer recommendations for CIOs and tech executives to partner effectively with the CEO and the board during these times of crisis? Like, what can they bring to the table?
I'm going to defer to Tony on that one, and then I'd like to bracket it because I have a really different angle on that one. But Tony, I think, can really probably create a better foundational response. First, Tony?
Yes. So, if you are the IT person, there's a lot of plumbing that needs to be sorted out right now. And I think you need to communicate that clearly to your CEO and the board. What do I mean by plumbing? The CIOs I know have been scouring the globe for PCs to enable people to work from home. And then looking at the VPN capability, looking at the way people work, the way people are doing their jobs. So if you're a gaming individual and you're used to downloading massive files, you probably can't do that from your home office. So how do you rejig the way you actually manage your work? So I think the first step that CIOs need to take is with the CEO and with other members of the team, just explaining exactly what are you doing to enable people, because most businesses are managed by people, to run effectively. And if it's particularly if it's done from home, if it's a factory setting, there are all kinds of other challenges. We're moving towards robotics and all the rest of it, but we need to have distance between people in factories, and the CIOs can plan all this and set it all out. So kind of step number one is just to demonstrate your capability to your CEO and your leadership team about how you are enabling your business to keep functioning. Think of it, this is the best business continuity planning exercise that's ever been undertaken. So demonstrate your capability with respect to that. Then the board is obviously going to want to understand, how are we weathering the cash storm and the production storm and everything else, and the CIO plays a key role. But then strategically going forward, how is the business model going to change, and what's going to be different in the way we manage? You need to work with your CEO closely so that the two of you and perhaps other senior members are communicating with the board, and set up Zoom calls and keep the board informed, because suddenly the board members who used to perhaps fly in for their regular meetings to a certain venue now aren't going to be able to do that, and probably will be too nervous to do that because they're on lockdown, because most of them are probably over 60 years old and they've been told not to travel, and they are, a threatened group. So set up an environment that allows that board to meet on a regular basis. You have the capability from a technical perspective to do that. So take the lead, set those things up, be the problem solution, before somebody comes screaming at you and you're kind of chasing your tail. Be the person putting these ideas forward and enabling that communication. Those would be my kind of immediate reactions.
Great insights, Tony. Thank you. Wow, what a session this has been. exceeding my expectations. I'd actually bracket that with a couple of ideas. Going forward, we're positioning our thought leadership and research around, in the short term, leading courageously, leading passionately, leading authentically in highly disruptive times, highly uncertain times. And to that end, in my view on this is, I think you need to change your paradigm and how you view the world in general. And that's the framework, right? The framework and how you see the world, you think the world works. Because, and Tim Stanley said this to me, a really bright CIO. He was early in 2005 with Harris, I think, with one of the first CRM systems in Vegas. And Tim talked about, you got your core strategy, you got your parallel strategy, and then you got the new orthogonal idea from outside. So, I mean, think about how is your industry going to be impacted from a disruptive force from the outside? And then think about your current strategic brain power within your company, both either if it's a line of business, if it's the C-suite or the board. And then think about how you, as an asset, as a resource, this superhero, this superpower, this courageous leader can facilitate, enable, and lead. And I say that gently and kindly because you'll go in and out, facilitating, enabling, leading, and being the therapist on how to innovate and disrupt your company. We know he missed it, right? They tried to pivot. They tried to do something that was not authentically theirs and they did not have buy-in up and down and through the stack, and it failed miserably. The stock is a high of what, 40, 10 years ago? And it's I think it's down at $6 now or so. But here's the broader and bigger idea. Get out of that comfort zone and begin to view and study other industries and how they're either innovating and disrupting themselves or how they're getting crushed. And then think through that whole ecosystem, the whole value system, the value chain, and think about where's the white space for your company with that new orthogonal idea, how to engage the C-suite in a strategic discussion. And very candidly, to tout HMG's core strength, it's HMG strategy. It's about strategically placing yourself, not what Wayne Gretzky said, where the puck's going to be. It's more like Tom Brady, hard to say from New York's admission, create a new playing experience, a new playing energy, a new playing field, a new playing game of time and space, and help the C-suite reimagine and reinvent the whole supply chain, the whole go-to-market, the whole value system. That's one big idea. There's a lot there. But the other really just granular idea is unpack the personal relationships, professional and personal, in the line of business and the C-suite and the board, and begin to figure out how they tick individually and begin to figure out how you match their go-to-market, if you will, their engagement model, and begin to work on really building world-class relationships. At the end of the day, everyone has, we talked about it before, come to the work with a pile of fears. How do you unpack and get successfully connected with the board and the C-suite in the line of business as a trusted partner, a trusted provider of technology services? I was one of the biggest individuals against outsourcing. I thought it was the biggest disservice our industry ever went through over the past 10, 20, 30 years. I was so happy to see that unwind in the past, 5 or 10 years. And companies realizing that, technology is a core competency. It's part of our differentiator. It's something we have to have domain expertise on. We have to innovate. We're a digital company, and that we happen to now all of a sudden everyone's a technology company.
Exactly right. Yeah, everybody is a technology company, and I won't reiterate what you've said so well. The only other comment I want to add to that is what this COVID-19 has demonstrated is this is a very small world, and we are all human beings in the world. And we need to think on a global basis. And sometimes kind of borders and dividers are not that helpful. Because clearly the COVID-19 hasn't discriminated amongst wherever it goes and whatever it does. And I think we need to think in a very global basis as we try and solve big problems like this. I don't think it helps for us to retreat too much. Yes, we need to be spatially distant at this time to solve it immediately. I get that, but we need to be socially close, and we need to understand that we're all human beings, and everybody, no matter where you are in the world, has got fears and concerns.
Well said, Tony. And, you go back as far as just 90 days ago when you first
Yes.
heard reports about the virus in China and what they were going through and how surreal it seemed, or 60 days ago. And now to realize that I was listening to the CEO of Starbucks. They're starting to open up their Starbucks stores again. Business is starting to happen again. And so they're coming back to some sense of normalcy and the new normal, the new reality.
Well, and I think we need to realize that, in the US, we are very much behind in terms of the cycle of this. And, one of the CIOs, Ralph Laurer yesterday was mentioning that they were right ahead of this, and they had kind of taken people out of their factories and they had isolated back in January. But now in China, they're over that and people are now coming back to work. So they are ahead of us. So there is an end. There is an end to this. It's got a difficult middle, and a lot of people are going to get sick, but there is an end to it, and we will survive, and we'll go on. It's a question of what emerges and what have we learned, and have we learned to be more collegial, more cooperative? Have we learned to lead from the heart? Have we leaned into our bigger me, or have we let our little me take over? And it's keeping that perspective. This too will pass, and how do we emerge, and do we emerge better?
Tony, this has been an awesome session. I'd like to tie it up here, kind of summarize, and then also give people a preview on some future events digitally, as well as what we're doing with our physical events in hopefully the June, July, August timeframe. Summarize a couple of key takeaways, Tony, from your point of view, just 3 or 4.
I think authenticity, leading from the heart, kind of being the bigger you, which probably means some sacrifice, and making sure that you use your authenticity and this digital screen to build trust, and the culture of your business will probably be defined or refined over the next month. Make sure that culture is what you want it to be.
Well said. And as I said on stage in Orlando Thursday morning when I got up there, I said, guys, we're in the middle of a crisis. It's going to get really bad and ugly. Dial in and get engaged. And I said, I think we're going into a recession. I called it Friday. I think it's pretty well known that the first this quarter and next quarter can be pretty tough. Couple of ideas. One, digitally, we're looking to serve the network, serve the platform. If you found value out of this, send Tony, myself, Tom Hoffman, Melissa Marr, input, any kind of builds. Help share this platform, this idea socially to your network. LinkedIn, we have August Policchio's on the line doing an amazing job with us. Some 100 to 200,000 LinkedIn views and posts throughout the week now, weekly in and around our summits. We're going to do this every Monday and Friday. I think we're probably going to go to a 40-minute format to keep it tight. We do want it interactive. Kevin, Chris from Dallas, thanks for your comment. Appreciate it. The summit model, when we move the summit out, like the Summit of America, which is usually 400 to 500 people at it, was to be Thursday the 26th. We have an hour-and-a-half special briefing with Harry Mosley for 15 minutes. Bhavin Shaw from MoveWorks with a client from Unity Health on AI in the enterprise for 10 minutes. Then a world-class panel with Ralph Laurer, Wendy Pfeiffer, Steve Philpott. Tom, help me. Who else is there on that panel session?
We're reaching out to other leaders too, looking to confirm. But it's going to be a rock star panel focused on this topic: courageous leadership in times of crisis.
Courageous leadership, and I see, yes, Angela Yoakum from Novant Health. Thank you, Melissa. Again, real excited about where we are in terms of this opportunity for us all. And the thought is, from Ram Shriram or Winston Churchill, never let a good crisis go to waste. Or from Winston Churchill, when you get to hell, what do? You walk through it. It's going to take insane focus and dialing in and leadership skills, folks. And I think the HMG platform is the choice, the place to be. And we want to be your go-to environment, community network platform to help you lead courageously in these insanely difficult times. But I think I'm calling I think the bottom's in the market. I think it's a slow grind out, not a U, not a V, an L. And I think we want to make you all rock stars, all insanely successful in your career sense. We've done a 2X, 4X, and 8X, moving people from bad situations, unhealthy situations, into insanely successful environments, including Facebook and Splunk and other successes. We love you and we want to be there for you. We're excited that we're the #1 platform or tech leader community in the world, and we want to help you be an insane success. Tony, final word is yours.
Well, Hunter, again, thank you so much for putting this together and arranging this and for the future sessions. I think just a community and people being inspired, people talking to each other, I think that's the key, to keep us all going. As I say, we need to be physically distant, but socially even more connected. And so I want to thank you for sort of facilitating and putting this together for the group. And I encourage everybody to join future sessions because this is a really great initiative that Hunter has embarked upon. Thank you, Hunter.
Great. Thank you all. We'll see you next Friday, right? Or next Monday. Sorry, Monday we have Snehal Antanani formerly with the DOD. And I think, Tom, a former U.S. commander talking about leadership in crisis. So that would be 11 Eastern, 8 Pacific. Please dial into that. Next Thursday is the Summit of America virtually for an hour and a half. Friday is another session. And looking forward to seeing you again soon. Thanks, folks.
Thanks, Hunter. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye now.
You. Thanks, Hunter and Tony. This concludes Courageous Leadership in Times of Global Crisis and Uncertainty, an HMG Strategy virtual briefing. Thanks for attending, and if we didn't get to your question today, we'll respond to it by email. As Hunter mentioned, we'll have our next virtual event on Monday with Snehal Antanani, former CTO from the U.S. Department of Defense. Thanks for joining and have a great day.